Now, since Street Fighter 6 is a few days away, a lot of people have been questioning what controller to actually pursue when it comes to learning Street Fighter 6. In this video, y'all already know I will be putting y'all onto source when it comes to pricing, which controller to actually get, what controller actually fits your playstyle, character, etc. But without wasting any more time, let's get straight up into it. Starting off with the PS5 controller. The PS5 controller I do not recommend when it comes to playing Street Fighter. The buttons and the bumpers are very weird when it comes to actually inputting combos and basically executing, because how fat and clunky the buttons are, normal buttons are, and then when it comes to the bumpers and triggers, y'all should already know how they feel. They're just big, bumpy, and clunky. I only recommend y'all to actually use that controller for Street Fighter 6 when you don't have a controller, but other than that, I do not recommend y'all to use the PS5 controller. Also, it comes in around $70 to $80, and then with the $70 to $80, don't forget that the PS5 controller mainly struggles with input delay when it comes to actually inputting combos on fighting games like Dragon Ball Z Fighters, Tekken. I do not recommend y'all to actually use this controller because of how much delay that this controller actually have when it comes to playing. Y'all should already know how important execution is, so having a controller dropping combos, execution, you can't really execute because how the controller feel, how bulky it is. I do not recommend y'all to actually use this controller. But for the PS4 controller, which is going to be one of the most fan favorite controllers because how easy it is to actually use, the design of the PS4 controller basically allow you to input a lot of buttons very fast. Controller is smaller, the buttons, the triggers, and the bumper is not actually bad. One thing that I also like about the PS4 controller is how fast you will be able to input certain things, such as drop impact. I have my drop impact on my PS4 controller as R3. When I see a drop impact, all I literally have to do is just take my right thumb, go down, and click the R3 as fast as possible. It's one of the easiest ways to actually counter the drop impact. I actually love having a R3 as this button. The R3s on the PS5 controller is not actually bad, but it's not really fitting as well. Also, because of the buttons not as big and clunky as the PS5 buttons, using the bumpers on the left side and the triggers is not really going to be as bad if you want to set that to drop impact or drop parry. This D-pad is one of the most standard fighting game controllers ever because how easy it is to use. The only problem that I have with this controller is that if you're not really good at the game, like when I mean good, I mean like if you don't really practice your execution, you will be jumping a lot accidentally, and y'all don't want that to happen. That's actually something that you're actually able to control, unlike the PS5, so where you're not actually able to control that. Now, next we will be talking about the most controversial thing ever, the hitbox. Now, following multiple events of the Capcom Cup, the Capcom Cup actually banned the hitbox from tournaments. Because how controversial it is, it's very easy. There have been multiple discussions of whether or not the hitbox and the additional buttons actually help people input the buttons faster or just have an advantage as a whole. But when it comes to Street Fighter 6, the fast buttons, direction, digital, and precise movements on this hitbox is actually going to give you a big leverage. One of the biggest pros, Daigo, actually used the hitbox just like how the PS4 controllers, Punk, Mena, RD, they actually use the PS4 controller. Daigo being one of the biggest pros and using the hitbox absolutely crazy. Also, when it comes to character specific, if y'all do want to play a charged character in Street Fighter 6, I do recommend y'all to use the hitbox. The only reason why I'm saying that, because it's so easy for y'all to actually charge inputs. On the controller, I have to hold back and press forward. Meanwhile, on the hitbox, you literally have to press two buttons, charge the movement back just for like 2-3 seconds, and then click forward again, which is very easy because you're using your whole hand. You have access to everything. The input errors don't actually exist on the hitbox. The execution on the hitbox is absolutely perfect. Y'all should already know that the hitbox is one of the most controversial, but it is one of the best controllers to ever use in the FGC history. Now for the next controller, we got Xbox. Xbox is not a bad controller, but the analog stick and the placements is very confusing when it comes to actually inputting things. Even though it's all personal preference and then you have been sticking with the controller as a whole, it's not a bad controller, but when it comes to the original Xbox controller, how loose the D-pad is not very good. Make sure y'all use an Elite controller. The Elite controller actually helps you put in many inputs as smooth as possible, minimal input errors. Plus, I'm pretty sure that I have back buttons. It's very smooth. It's not as bad as everybody consider it. I just don't see nobody using the Xbox controller. For the next controller, a lot of people should be knowing about this, which is the arcade stick. The arcade stick is one of the most universal sticks ever because it had been in arcade machines, cabinets. If y'all ever went to a laundromat or wherever, y'all just have to put a quarter in to use the stick and the buttons that come with it. That is basically an arcade stick. One of the best arcade sticks that I actually recommend is the Obsidian stick. I've seen a lot of people use that Obsidian stick, maybe because it's smooth, be able to move certain parts, install certain parts, fix certain parts. It's very easy to actually replace multiple parts of that stick just in case it start breaking. Multiple people like Fujiwara, I'm pretty sure I pronounced that right, Bonchan, and Taquito, they actually use this fight stick. Y'all should already know. When I start naming pros using a certain thing, it's because it's actually worthy. A lot of people have been winning. Y'all don't want to use a controller that not a single pro actually used in Street Fighter and then you start complaining about it. No, don't do that to yourselves. If you're actually used to using the arcade stick, I do recommend y'all to using the arcade stick. Just get y'all sturdy arcade stick so that way have a lot of durability. But like I said, Obsidian fight stick, if y'all do want to go with that, I do recommend y'all to actually use the fight stick. There's not really too many cons to it. I just love it as a whole. You just have to execute very smoothly because like I said, it's not like to with a D-pad controller or a hitbox. You actually have to be very execution heavy with the arcade stick in terms of movements. But other than that, that's pretty much the only con. Now for the last controller, if y'all used to using the PS5 bulky controller and y'all need a better controller to actually compete in fighting games, I do recommend y'all to use the Victrix Pro. Having a big bulky design just like Xbox controllers and a PS5 controller, you're actually able to put 6 inputs instead of just having an analog on your right side, making it so much easier to actually input drive impact or drive parries or even shortcuts to actually use the drive parries. Also, I'm pretty sure it comes with 2 to 4 back buttons, so you're able to actually set many buttons on this controller. This is basically the hitbox version of a PS4 controller. It's very good in fighting games where there's low latency. It is not as high latency as the PS5 controller, but it just, you know, in size it is. You have choices in between D-pads. You're actually able to move your buttons around. If you want your buttons on the left instead of the right, I should already know you're able to swap that too. You're able to do a lot of customization when it comes to actually this Victrix Pro. When it comes to the best controller, there's not really no such thing as the best controller or personal preference and prices, but if y'all are new to fighting games, I do recommend y'all to use either the hitbox, which is very brand new to the scene. Actually, I should already know that. PS4 controller and or the Victrix, because of how smooth those two pads actually work. They're not really very execution heavy, and pros basically want the hitbox, and they also actually won with the PS4 pad. However, the 2-time champ Mena RD actually used the PS4 pad. I do recommend you to use that, but other than that, those are my 3 picks. Like I said, it all comes down to personal preference, prices, etc. The situation. What are you used to? What are you not used to? What controller are you actually using before? I do recommend, like I said, the PS5 controller. That should be like a last resort unless y'all are very heavy on practicing moves so where y'all don't mess up and you actually know the timing. But if y'all brand new to Street Fighter, I do not recommend y'all to use a PS5 controller. PS4 very standard. PS5 is going to be tournament ready for, you know, for majors and stuff. If y'all do want to compete, they will be having input converters and etc, so you don't really have to worry about it. But other than that, I will be taking my PS4 controller and going on about my day. Make sure to leave a like, squad if you're new with notifications, but send them a video. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.